Welcome back to Grim Rules. The 90s, baby. Crash Bandicoot. Ooh! Furbies. Polly Pockets. The decade I was born. It also happens to be the time Games Workshop came out with these guys right here. The High Elves. And this Citadel paint starter set. Ooh-hoo. Now this might come as a surprise to you. I know it's a tough look. I was actually born in 1996, the year both of these came out. So I have no experience painting Warhammer with 90s paints in the 90s when all the characters were little quirky, little goofy little guys. I need to go feel the roots of true Warhammer painting. So I thought, why not challenge myself by using only things from Games Workshop in the 90s. I want to get that true, authentic experience, right? I feel like a fake 90s kid. It's a shame. So, the challenge, using only paints from the starter set. Only the brush from the starter set. And trying to get it as close to the box art as possible, to see were the 90s truly better than big 2025. I will admit there is a little clickbait. I'm not going to open this up. As much as I love my YouTube channel and my 2 videos I have on it so far, I'm not quite ready to crack open one of my prized possessions. But fear not, as the wonderful people at War Colors actually have made and formulated paints from that same starter set, but in the modern day. And they say they use the exact same formula, or as close as they can possibly get. Maybe someday I'll crack that open and we'll actually paint that in there. Sorry. This is as close as I'm gonna get. Inside the starter set, we have Skull White, Sunburst Yellow, Bronzed Flesh, Blood Red, Serpent Bite Leather, Mithril Silver, Enchanted Blue, the classic Goblin Green I've heard so much about, Chaos Black, and Flesh Wash. I also said no to including any brushes, but the wonderful people at War Colors actually included a brush. So we're only going to use this brush to mimic the starter brush, although looking at the starter brush on the box, it looks a lot thinner than this one. It's a thick boy. So let's go ahead and get these guys based up with the square bases primed up, and let's get cooking away in the 90s. Starting out our beautiful, fantastic, wonderful 90s baby boy, we have 3 options in the box. I'm going to go with the spearman looking elf, and the only technical paint I have on hand is some of the snow stuff, and technical paint is wonderful to work with, but also at the same time the most annoying thing to work with. I need like a little spatula or something. And also what's cool about technical paint is you can actually, some of it like this, you can handle with your hands too, and it doesn't leave residue or anything. And of course we need to deck out our 90s boy with some of that Goblin Green. So after letting it dry for about an hour, we're able to, it should be nearly hard as a rock. I'm still lightly kind of just tapping it on. And from here, I thought I was going to just dry brush on that lighter green. It turns out technical paint takes a long time to dry. So we're going to let that sit while we jump into our wonderful elf spearmen. And I decided to just prime it white. I figured that's what most people would probably do. Zenithal or priming black would take way too long, considering this guy is unintentionally so. It's just the 90s Warhammer guys I have are mainly white and silver. So you can see I picked out all the wonderful, beautiful details with that white. And you didn't see it, but it took me about 3 coats. Because you could even see, even though I was going over bone, wrath, whatever, it still took me a hot minute. And same thing with this red. You can see when I zoom in, the coverage of this paint is not particularly great, but also it's not the worst. It's been kind of hyped up online. So from here, I actually noticed on the box I have to line. He has like these little lining things. And this brush, I really appreciate it, Wargamers. This brush was the hardest part of this G-darn challenge. It's too big. It's a size 5 brush, if that gives anyone any indication. It splits almost immediately. It started out somewhat decently, and you'll see pretty quickly, even on just the second layer of red, the bristles start to split, and it's just wildly annoying. Just picking out little details like this are nearly impossible, and I really had to lock in, which maybe someday, one day, I'll come back. I have lots of these guys. I'll use the same paints, but use my typical repertoire of brushes. I don't know how they did it at the time with these paints, but the red details on his helmet actually go up to a yellow. So I tried my you can see the brushes already doing wacky wild things. I tried my darndest kind of wet blend, making my own orange out of the red and the sunburst yellow. And so from here, I had to do his little baits and his gloves using the serpent bite. I got it down. Brown? What the hell is it called? Serpent bite brown. Honestly, this color had, I would say, one of the worst coverages. The brush strokes were insane. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to thin this paint or not, or even use it on a wet palette, but I am. It's the only thing I have to put paint on, and I don't have a dry palette or anything like that, so I put maybe 5 or 6 coats total of this off camera, and even then it still looks a little streaky. Our wonderful elf also has some, of course, little details. These 90s models don't get lost in a lot of details, but there was a little gem on his chest, which I get later, and then his helmet. I actually really lucked out, like I mentioned earlier, with these models. They're mostly white and mithril silver, and the mithril silver, as far as metallics go, I mean, it's not the best metallic I have. My favorite's still the Reaper line of metallics. I think they look awesome. I'm sure some people hate them. They kind of look a little glittery, but I don't mind that. It took me a coat. I think maybe I did 2 coats of that mithril silver. I didn't want it to look too chunky. I also decided to save all these little details after I put the mithril silver on. I figured it'd be easier to go over and cover up that mithril silver than trying to be super fine and careful with this brush. It just was not happening, buddy, okay? So if you'd use this with this specific challenge, do the mithril silver first, and then you can always go back and cover it back up. But this worked actually really well for me. I didn't have to do a ton of touching up, or the mithril silver didn't bleed over. Here I'm just getting his shoulder pads and some other details I missed when I did my initial run of red. You'll notice I do that quite a bit in this. On the box, I only see the front of these guys, so I was really hyper focused on matching that, and then as I looked closer at some of these details, especially on the back, I realized I was missing quite a bit. So that was a little annoying after building up coat upon coat upon coat upon coat, just to realize I missed some stuff. This yellow actually isn't too bad on the white prime. I missed his blonde locks there, and that actually turned out, I thought, pretty well, and it does look very 90s. I'm not sure the best way to handle his face. Usually I build up from a dark brown red and then build up to flesh tones. But from here I just went straight with the flesh. I figured, hey, that's probably what we did in the 90s, baby. And I don't know if it would have been easier for me to do the face first and then the helmet, or the way I did it. It's not a lot of face to work with, and I sure tried my damnedest. I then noticed that there is a little yellowy orange edge highlight on everything, so I tried. I actually don't think it turned out too bad, the edge highlight, and then I dotted those little green gems with a little reflective white. I didn't want to get too caught up in the details. You can see I'm kind of cleaning up the face and applying almost like a wash. I really thinned down a reddish fleshy tone, just try to bring some reds back in I wasn't getting in details with anything. I tried. You can see here I got a little light brown action trying to edge highlight my mans here, and that actually I think turned out okay. But this brush, I don't know why I did that to myself. But the colors themselves, the paints, they're thin, maybe a little tough to work with, but they just have such a distinct look and a smell. it's a very strong smell. So I don't know what we do with acrylic paints now, but there's not really a smell. This is an undeniably strong paint smell. Moving on to the shield, I was letting him dry because his paint does seem to have longer dry times, or at least maybe because I was thinning it out on a wet palette. I decided to tackle the shield. Oh my god, why? This would not have been, I don't think, that hard if I had a smaller brush. This little design, it is raised, and I could have dry brushed it, but again, I'm only using this brush, and if I went back in time, I probably would have lightly dry brushed the red and then went back in with the white to get in the details, because trying to trace over with this thick boy brush was one of the hardest things I think I ever did on this challenge. So you can see I tried to get a really thin tight point. The brush really didn't want to work with me most of the time. I don't think it looks too bad, all things considered, but it definitely was time consuming, and I wish I had a smaller brush. I noticed there is also a little bit of a yellowy orange edge highlight again. I have no idea how someone would have done this. I guess the starter brush was a lot thinner, but here, holy moly, I tried. I know I could go back with the white and just clean up my rough lines if I had any overspill. I thought I was being clever here. I noticed that there's actually an inner black shadow on the whole design, and with this brush it was not happening. No way in hell. So I actually really thinned down, almost made like a glaze, tried to make like a wash. I really just should have used the flesh wash. Maybe that would have worked, but I feel like that brown would have been kind of ugly. So I tried to like cheat it by doing this. I don't think it turned out too awful. And while I had that, I decided to use my kind of fake wash glaze type beat thing and put it over the mithril silver, and then also get some shadows with it by just pushing in the recesses. It actually looks pretty good here. It does not dry very well, so I had to go back later and go with some, which wasn't a big deal, but I wish it dried kind of more how it applied. But I went back with some white and mithril silver and just kind of punched back up some things after I was done kind of applying this little wash. You can see here, that's what I'm doing after it all dried. I just went back and I tried my hardest. It's not pretty, and I think I'm going to try this again. I don't know if I'll record it, but maybe I'll try it again with a proper cool brush. I don't think I'll ever use this brush again, or if I do, it's going to be for like enamel washes or what have you. See here, I'm trying to dot the I's. Yeah, right, buddy. Yeah, right, buddy. As you remember, I can't use any of your brush, so I tried to dry brush with this light lime green, and honestly, not too bad. The base is obviously my favorite part. The hardest part was the brush, and after a nice little rimming of the goblin green, we are all set. Honestly, not too bad, all things considered. But without further ado, here's a reveal. And there it is, one little stinker from the 90s. I know I said it a lot in the video, but honestly, the paints aren't super bad. I didn't mind working with them. The hardest part, and I say it a lot in the video, the brush. That thing, if you get the Wargamers brush, do not get the size 5 brush. It wasn't too bad starting out. Definitely not meant for at least a miniature this size. It's a decent enough brush, the quality of it wise. That was really the hindrance of this whole thing. I'll probably go back. Let me know if you're interested in watching. I'll use my actual brushes and we'll try to paint this guy up. Maybe not mimicking the box art completely, but maybe trying to match the colors but still putting on how I normally paint. Just restricting myself to the War Colors paint. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to comment, like, subscribe. If you can, go ahead and order yourself a starter set of these War Color. I'll link it in the description. They're really fun to work with. They're not super expensive, and if you can find a little 90s fella or a miniature that looks like it's one of these guys from the 90s, try it. It's a lot of fun. Let me know what you guys want to see next, and I will catch you next time on Grim Rules.